They are uncertain what the development community has in mind, and so the only thing they can do is fear the worst. They're going to tear everything down. The development community, on the other hand, is seeking, I believe, clarification and they want to be able to pursue their plans in good faith and are seeking clarity on what those processes are and having it very clear within a plan on what a future of an area is would give them more guidance that they'd be able to move forward without having a historic preservation debate on every single property in town as it comes up for redevelopment. We try to have that debate as a community up front rather than at the point of development. That is one very strong thought that I'd like, I really think that Jefferson City would benefit by designating not only historic areas, but also areas that are intended to be redeveloped. And then the last one, strengthen downtown, expand living opportunities. I didn't go into a whole lot of detail. I'll go back to the downtown slide real quick and give you a few thoughts. I don't think we've necessarily laid everything out perfectly yet, but we do have some draft maps within the plan on some of our thinking downtown. But there's a mix of different character, styles of building and characters of land use within downtown. I mean, the most notable being the high street commercial storefront commercial area, and so get the map right here, along there, and along Madison Street as well. And then I mentioned along Capitol Avenue, it's a little bit different in character. It's mostly office type uses. You lose the storefronts, but they're still nice commercial buildings that are built in a downtown context. Then you go down to McCarty Street, and the character changes quite dramatically. You see more parking lots. You see larger, more modern buildings. You still see a number of older, houses mixed into there. There's been fierce debates in the public realm about the future of specific houses on that street. That street, I believe, has some potential, either for possibly a continuation of some of the, be it financial or office-oriented type development. There are a number of vacant lots along that street, either parking lots, some cases gravel parking lots, or cleared land. And so building something like that, more office commercial type uses might be appropriate. But I also think that apartment buildings could be a very appropriate use along McCarty Street. So there's already a cluster of apartment buildings at Washington Street and McCarty. And so 3 different corners of that intersection are occupied by apartment buildings. The Wymore Place Apartments, I can't remember the name of the stuff across the street from there. And then across McCarty is an apartment building, I believe, owned by the Turgeon family. And, I'm not in the market for a downtown apartment, but I've heard that they command some pretty fair rents, or some pretty good rents. In other words, that there could be a financial incentive, for people to build more apartments there. It would make sense. There's the huge state government complex that's located there. I'm not necessarily one to subscribe to people wanting to buy, large numbers of people wanting to buy a house next to where they work. But if you have a large enough building, I think that there is that very small percent that want exactly that. And if it's a large enough building, such as the Truman Building and the rest of the complex there really is a strong desire for people to live close to where they work. And this would be the most logical place that I see in our community to make it happen. So, expanding apartments, specifically along McCarty Street, I think would seem to make sense. And we do hear quite frequently about the desire for more loft apartments. The number of loft apartments is kind of limited. It's capped. There's only so many buildings downtown. but there is space available to build new buildings on the fringes of the downtown area. And if done so appropriately, in appropriate designs, I think it would be a very beneficial addition to the downtown environment. Now I gotta go all the way back to the end again. Mr. Vice Chair, I open it up for discussion. I have three things. Are there any topics that maybe we missed, or any topics that I presented that maybe I need to elaborate on, go back to? Any areas or types of uses that maybe we need to explore more on a staff level? We can totally go back and do more homework, if the commission thinks we need to. And then more specifically, if there's any specific changes that we feel need to be made. Those are three general topics I'd throw out there, but I'd leave it up to you all to discuss what you want.
I have one question. I actually have multiple, but I waited till the end because I was figuring to try to answer them. So across the river where it's yellow, and a lot of that is floodplain, why label it yellow if it's floodplain? Why not do like an industrial type setting?
We actually had a bit of a debate on whether to label floodplain as a conservation type category, and ultimately chose not to. We were trying to limit the number of categories. I personally took a stance that I'm not much in favor of trying to accomplish floodplain goals on a land use map. We actually, if you look at our zoning map, you will see exactly that. There are certain areas that are zoned a conservation category, and it's very obviously an attempt by the previous land use planners of this community to accomplish floodplain goals through zoning. I think you accomplish floodplain goals through the floodplain regulations. Okay, leave zoning out of it. You have to recognize what an appropriate use for the land is. In many cases, if it's floodplain, there's some cases where there's not a whole lot of appropriate uses there.
Agriculture.
Agriculture could be one, yeah. And so we totally could try to designate those areas. I think that we would have a hard time designating anything except perhaps the Missouri River floodplain as that category, though, because to try to get up into the upper reaches of other rivers, or agriculture in general, areas that are not prone to flooding, I think would be very difficult. This is not we're an urban area. We're not we're not going to be in the mindset of trying to planning for agriculture. It's not to say that it's something that would be outlawed or anything like that. It's just not what we're planning for.
There are some areas that are agricultural. They would have to get special use. That's come.
Yeah, there is a category in the land use or in the zoning code for exactly that.
In residential.
There's a couple zoning districts that it can accomplish agricultural type stuff. We've actually had debates internally about maybe doing away with at least one of those because it's not used really. We have, I think, a special permit process for agriculture that might, I think we've brought a couple of those in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so there's ways to deal with it within the zoning code, but we haven't tried to identify areas on the land use map.
And the only reason I guess I said that is just because, there's really if it's in a floodplain or floodway, you couldn't really, I don't know what the rules are on that, but you can't really, you couldn't bring a bunch of soil in and build that all up, because then that would disperse water somewhere else later on down the river, or.
Yeah, we do have a floodplain engineer. A lot of those questions get answered, within the Public Works Department. So we're one step removed from that. But yes, there are very specific regulations on what you can and cannot do. Depending on if you're in a floodway or a floodplain or not. And so you
don't have to elaborate on it that much. I was just curious why.
This interchange and I will bring this up because it is relevant. This interchange of, Highway,
54.
54 and 63, I mean, there's, how do you put it? It's all floodplain around it, but it's flat, okay? You don't find flat land in Jefferson City. And so in that respect, there could be potential there. If you look at what larger urban areas such as Chesterfield have done with their floodplain, you can see some of the potential of very
Yes,
large
actually,
retail developments.
I wrote that down.
Okay.
Is it pumps that they use, right?
I'm not certain of the specifics, but I believe it's private, that it's a private levy,
Yeah.
and they take that levy very seriously because they pay a lot of money for flood insurance, and they did the math calculation on what flood insurance costs and what retail stores rent for, and the equation was a positive number, and so that's how it happened. I would question the ability of that level of retail to occur here. But that's not to say that there couldn't be potential for, a smaller scale, be it a truck stop or perhaps a hotel. I kind of doubt a hotel. But even then, to accomplish that would probably be fairly difficult. If someone was wanting to do something like that, I'll be honest, the way to do it would probably be to come in front of this body and propose an amendment to the comprehensive plan map. I mean, if it's going to be that kind of shift to a commercial category and they're serious about doing it, then yeah, that would be a point where we reevaluate over there. Until there's some sort of impetus or reason to think that it's going to occur, it's hard to imagine it as anything other than what's already there now. It's kind of the stance we've taken.
The only issue I have is going out our boundaries and even though we were legally, we can say that's what it should be, that's all under agriculture. It's never going to be anything else. I mean, they've got a big agriculture operation.
Yeah, and
They're going to have to come, if it's ever annexed, and they'll have to come back with special use, and then the city oversees everything that we do.
yeah, and again, it's not really what the purpose of going out that far is. It's more just to provide that base level and to recognize any deviations from it that are already existing out there. It could certainly be trimmed up. Even the 96 plan went out to some extent. Left a lot of holes. I wasn't really quite sure how to interpret that. Haven't been, at least. And so thought that a more blanket approach is probably more appropriate. So, I could be wrong. Could certainly go a different direction.
Oh, I got a quick question too. Who's in charge of the levee across the river or on the other side of the bridge?
There's a levee district.
Capital View Levy District.
Well,
Capital
I don't know
View
which,
Levee
is that who it is?
Yeah, I used to
If
see
you,
the minutes.
if you look at the bridge where the Missouri River Bridge is at, and you walk that walkway,
Pedestrian
and
bridge.
you look down at the levee, the water that is falling off the bridge has actually started to wash away that levee. I don't know if you don't know.
Brett Smith is
Oh.
on the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's in the office.
I'm assuming does he know that?
Oh, I am sure he
Oh, okay.
is. He's pretty in tune with stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I know that after the flood, there's major issues there. I don't know the details exactly, but yeah, they have some work to do on their levee. So, and I say they, I mean they're just one step removed from the city. They're basically a different, almost government organization. That levee district is.
Capital View Levy District. You send me, well, I'm not working tomorrow, but send me an email Monday, I'll get you in touch with Brett and whatever guys on the commission or on the district.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussions? Throw rotten tomatoes at me or anything. What do you think? On is recording this entire thing.
What do you need from us?
In general, does this seem logical, appropriate? Do you think we're moving in the right direction?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is there anything that stood out as maybe being a red flag? something that's worth either discussing or me elaborating more on anything you didn't understand. That maybe we need to change, direction only slightly on. And is there anything we're missing? Going back to the general strategies, it's a fairly short list. You could probably expand it. We're accomplishing a lot more within that map, but these are the things we're trying to focus on this time. And so giving a lot of weight to that multifamily residential category, to that downtown category, and to pointing at redevelopment opportunities. Seem appropriate. That's what I was hoping for. So,
Thank you for all the work you guys put into it. Clearly you put in more than a lot of thought. And it's very well thought